Blessing.
Major blessing. Because I would have stopped practicing an hour and a half, 2 hours, and went on. But Tourette syndrome said, nah, got something else for seeing America's hand in so much corruption. And then I'm looking also at the history of this nation, slavery and Jim Crow and segregation, right? I can't reconcile standing up for this symbol, right?
I am 58 years old. I watched basketball my entire adult life, from press row, from courtside, from hallways where conversations happened that never made it into any newspaper. I watched Jordan. I watched Magic. I watched all of them. But I watched one man disappear in real time. And I have never forgotten what that looked like. Not a slow decline, not a career that wound down naturally. A disappearance. Clean, deliberate, complete. The kind that requires coordination from people who know exactly what they are doing. Nobody has told this story the way it actually happened, until right now. Stay with me, because what I watched in 1996 explains something about this league that the league has spent 30 years hoping everyone would forget. His name was Chris Jackson when he arrived at Louisiana State University in 1988. 18 years old, out of Gulfport, Mississippi, raised by a single mother in poverty, and carrying something nobody in that program had ever seen before: Tourette's syndrome. His brain demanded perfection in a way most people cannot understand. He would tie his shoes for 10 minutes. One lace could not touch the other. If it did, he started over. On a basketball court, that compulsion became something else entirely. He did not practice shooting the way other players practiced. His mind demanded the shot feel right, not just go in. If it went in but touched the rim, his brain registered failure. He had to restart the sequence. What that obsession built was one of the most lethal shooting strokes anyone had ever seen at any level. As a freshman, he averaged over 30 points per game. That record still stands in the Southeastern Conference. He dropped 53 on Florida, 55 on Ole Miss, two-time first-team All-American, two-time SEC Player of the Year. People who watched him in 1989 still say the same thing. He was pulling up from 30 feet in transition before anyone had a name for what that was. What Steph Curry turned into the architecture of modern championship basketball, Chris Jackson was doing in Baton Rouge before the NBA knew how to value it. Denver took him 3rd overall in 1990. A man named Raymond, covered the Nuggets beat for 8 years, was standing near the tunnel after a game in Denver in 1992. He said to me, "That kid is going to be one of the 5 best scorers in this league inside 3 years. There is nothing anybody can do to stop that shot." Raymond was right. By 1993, Abdul-Rauf, who had converted to Islam in 1991 and changed his name from Chris Jackson, won the Most Improved Player award. 19 points, over 4 assists, and a free throw percentage that bordered on supernatural. By the 1995 to 96 season, he was leading the entire NBA in free throw shooting at 93%. He averaged 19 points and almost 7 assists. He was 26 years old. On December 7th, 1995, he dropped 51 points on the Utah Jazz. John Stockton, one of the finest defenders the game has ever produced, could not stay in front of him. On February 4th, 1996, the Chicago Bulls came to Denver, the greatest team in NBA history. 72 wins that season. Michael Jordan at the absolute peak of his powers. Abdul-Rauf scored 32 points. He outplayed Jordan. Denver won. Remember that game. Hold that image. A 26-year-old superstar in full command of his abilities, outperforming the best player in the world on his biggest night. That is who this man was when the NBA decided it was finished with him. Here is what people say about what happened next. They say he brought it on himself. They say he made a political choice and accepted the consequences. They say the league had rules and he broke them. Here is what actually happened. For months during that 1995-96 season, Abdul-Rauf had been staying in the locker room or sitting quietly during the national anthem. He did not hold press conferences about it. He did not recruit media attention. It was personal. It was rooted in his faith. In Islam, there is a concept called Tawheed, the oneness of God. Abdul-Rauf believed that standing for a nationalist ritual placed a symbol above the sacred. His conscience would not allow it. In March 1996, a reporter noticed. The story exploded overnight. Abdul-Rauf explained his position clearly. The flag represented oppression. He pointed to slavery. He pointed to racial injustice. He said, "You cannot be for God and for oppression simultaneously." And then he said something the coverage consistently buried. He was not criticizing people who stood. He was asking not to be criticized for sitting. This was 1996. The Cold War was over. The economy was expanding. American exceptionalism was the dominant national religion, and the NBA was selling itself as global family entertainment. Michael Jordan had already established the template. Political silence was the price of superstardom. Republicans buy sneakers too. That was the rule. Stay quiet, perform gratitude, get rich. Abdul-Rauf shattered that rule. The league responded within days. Commissioner David Stern suspended him indefinitely without pay on March 12, 1996. The stated reason was a rule buried in the NBA operations manual, requiring players to stand in a dignified posture during the anthem. The rule had never been collectively bargained with the players' union. Civil liberties organizations were immediately furious. The players' union argued it violated the Civil Rights Act. None of it mattered. The suspension cost Abdul-Rauf over $31,000 per game. After missing one game, a compromise was reached. He could stand during the anthem with his eyes closed and his head down, using the time to pray silently for people suffering across all walks of life. He accepted. He returned to the court. The damage was already done, and everyone in that league knew it. Fans booed him in every arena from that night forward. Death threats arrived in quantity. 4 employees from a Denver radio station entered a local mosque and played the national anthem on a bugle and trumpet inside the place of worship. This was not protest. This was intimidation directed at an entire religious community because one man had the audacity to pray instead of perform. Abdul-Rauf finished the season, and on June 13, 1996, Denver traded him to Sacramento. He had just averaged 19 points and almost 7 assists per game. He was 27 years old. The return Denver received was an aging veteran approaching retirement and a second-round pick. No one in the press room that day pretended this was a basketball trade. This was a disposal. In Sacramento, his role shrank immediately. He still shot over 44% from the field, still hit 38% from three in an era only beginning to understand how valuable that was. But his starts dropped. His minutes dropped. The 1997-98 season, he played 31 games. Then, on July 1, 1998, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf became a free agent. He was 29 years old. An elite shooter. A 93% free throw shooter at his peak. A point guard who had outscored Michael Jordan on Michael Jordan's best team's best night. 29 teams did not call him. Not one. The league simultaneously locked out its players on that same date. The lockout lasted over 6 months. When it ended, general managers were scrambling to fill rosters for a shortened 50-game season. They wanted proven veterans. They wanted quiet. Abdul-Rauf carried what front offices called a distraction label, which is the language organizations use when they mean something they cannot say publicly. The lockout gave every team perfect cover. No conspiracy memo was required. He signed with a club in Turkey. The contract was worth $3.4 million over 2 years. 3 months in, the team stopped paying him and held his passport. It took 2 weeks of negotiation to get it returned. He described that period as losing his love for the game. In July 2001, he was building a home on 53 acres in Gulfport, Mississippi. Days before the fire, someone spray-painted 3 letters near his property. KKK. On July 30th, the house burned to the ground. Arson. The FBI investigated it as a hate crime. The Klan was the prime suspect. No charges were ever filed. He tried one last comeback with the Vancouver Grizzlies in 2000. He was 31. He played 41 games, averaging 6.5 points in under 12 minutes. He kept receiving DNPs. He approached the coaching staff directly and asked why he was not playing. They could not give him a reason. After that season, he left the NBA forever. In 2017, he joined the Big Three, a 3-on-3 league for former NBA players. He was 48 years old. He crossed up players 2 decades younger. He hit pull-up jumpers with the same rhythm he had developed in Baton Rouge 30 years earlier. Steph Curry called him a pioneer. Phil Jackson and Dale Brown called him the prototype for the modern shooting guard. A man who the NBA said was finished at 29 was dominating professional competition at 48. If he could do that, then what exactly happened between 1998 and 2000 was not a basketball decision. I am 58 years old. I have watched this league from close enough to understand the difference between a career that ends and a career that is ended. I have watched players decline. I have watched injuries take what time would not. What happened to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf did not look like that. It looked like a league that built its global brand on patriotic performance, deciding that one man's conscience was a threat to the product. A suspension, a trade for nothing, a lockout that provided perfect cover. 30 years of silence, 29 teams, total silence. One man, his home burned to the ground in Mississippi, and no one was ever charged. That is not a career decline. That is a verdict.